My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 22 years old, and last week I boarded a one-way flight to Germany to start a life my family knew nothing about until the final 48 hours. 3 weeks before that flight, I walked across my college graduation stage completely alone, while I received my honors diploma in front of thousands of strangers. My parents were back home hosting a Super Bowl party for nearly 50 guests. The 4 seats I reserved for them sat empty under my name. After the ceremony, I stood in the stadium parking lot longer than necessary, watching families take pictures, fathers lifting sons onto their shoulders, mothers crying into bouquets of flowers. I kept my hands in my pockets and waited for the tightness in my chest to pass. Tucked inside the inner pocket of my graduation gown was a sealed envelope, heavy paper, official seal. I hadn't opened it yet. I already knew whatever was inside had the power to change everything. I just didn't know how much. Before I explain what happened next, I want to take you back 6 weeks to the phone call that finally made something in me go quiet. 6 weeks before graduation. I was sitting on the edge of my dorm bed, staring at the calendar taped above my desk. February 9th, 2 p.m. I had never asked my parents for much. I paid my own tuition through scholarships, worked 2 jobs, kept my head down. But this felt different. This was the finish line. I called home. The television was loud in the background. Sports commentary. My father's voice cut through before my mother even said hello. Graduation's February 9th, I said, 2 o'clock. Silence. You know that's Super Bowl Sunday, right? My mother finally replied. I know. The ceremony's 2 hours. The stadium's 40 minutes from the house. You could make it back before halftime. Another pause. Then my father took the phone. Logan's got important people coming, he said. A regional scout. This could be big for him. Logan? Always Logan. I didn't argue. I'd learned a long time ago that arguing in my family didn't change outcomes. It only made things colder. Graduations happen every year, my mother added gently. The Super Bowl only comes once. That was the moment I understood something clearly in my family. My milestones were optional. My brothers were not. And what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was already holding a secret that would make that empty row of seats mean something very different. After my father mentioned the scout, I stayed on the line longer than I should have. I'm graduating with honors, I said, not defensive, just factual. 4 years, no breaks. I'd like you there. We are proud of you, my mother replied quickly. The way people say something they think should be enough. You've always been responsible. That was the word they used for me instead of present, instead of important. Dad came back on. Logan's got 3 college coaches stopping by before the game. One of them's connected to a pro development program. We can't reschedule that. I'm not asking you to reschedule, I said. Just show up for 2 hours. Silence again. I could hear laughter in the background. The pre-planning had already started. Catering orders, guest lists, beer deliveries. Ethan, my father said finally, voice firm now. Opportunities like this don't come twice. Your brother's at a turning point. I stared at the wall across from me. The paint was chipped near the window. I'd meant to fix it before moving out. And I'm not, I asked. That's different, my mother cut in gently. You've always been steady. Graduations happen every year. The Super Bowl only comes once. There it was again. Calm, practical, final. In that moment, I realized something that had probably been true for years. I was the child they didn't worry about losing. I was the safe investment, the low-maintenance one. The one who didn't need showing up for, because I'd figure it out anyway. They weren't confused. They weren't overwhelmed. They were choosing. I understand, I said. And I did. I understood that in my family. Love was measured by perceived potential return. Logan had it athletic, visible, explosive. Scouts came to him. Coaches called him. He filled a room without trying. I filled spreadsheets. I wrote research proposals. I paid my own rent. We'll celebrate later, Mom added brightly. Already distracted. Send us pictures. The line clicked dead. I kept the phone against my ear a few seconds longer, listening to nothing. They hadn't asked what honors I was receiving. They hadn't asked if I was speaking. They hadn't asked if I needed anything. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time I stopped making excuses for them. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't yell. I just set it down carefully on my desk and leaned back in my chair. Across the hall, someone was laughing. Downstairs, a door slammed. Campus life moved forward like nothing had shifted. But something had. For years, I told myself the imbalance was temporary. That once Logan made it or didn't, they'd recalibrate. That someday, there would be room for both of us. That phone call ended that belief. This wasn't about one ceremony, it was about a pattern. And for the first time in my life, instead of trying to fight it, I started thinking about what it would look like to step outside of it entirely. The pattern didn't start with the Super Bowl, it started 4 years earlier. The afternoon, I brought my college acceptance letter home. I was 18. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding the envelope like it weighed something. Partial academic scholarship, 60% tuition covered, departmental honors track. I'd worked for it late nights, advanced placement classes, weekends at the library, while Logan was at tournaments. I got in, I said, and they offered me a scholarship. Dad glanced up from his laptop for half a second. That's good. Mom smiled, but it was tight. We should talk about finances. That conversation lasted less than 10 minutes and shaped the next 4 years of my life. We can't contribute much, Dad said plainly. Logan's entering a critical training window. His coach says if we invest now, it could pay off big. Invest. That was the word he used. Mom put a hand on my shoulder. You've always been independent, Ethan. You'll figure it out. And I did. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I took out the smallest loan possible. I worked mornings at a coffee shop before classes, graded papers as a teaching assistant in the afternoons, and tutored high school students online at night. My schedule ran from 5 a.m. until midnight most days. I kept my GPA at 3.9. I ate cheap noodles more often than I'd admit. Meanwhile, Logan turned 19 and received a brand new Dodge Charger. For transportation to training, Dad explained. He got a private strength coach, a nutritionist, flights to national combines first class, because athletes need to arrive fresh. Every dollar was labeled an investment in his future. I wasn't jealous, not exactly. I understood the logic they believed in. Professional sports meant visibility, money, prestige. My major public policy, with a concentration in socioeconomic systems, sounded abstract to them, academic, not profitable. During my 4 years at school, I went home 6 times. Each visit followed the same script. Help Mom set up for Logan's teammates coming over, listen to Dad, break down game footage at the dinner table, watch relatives ask Logan about scouts, stats, projections. No one asked about my research on educational access disparities. No one asked about the academic conference I presented at sophomore year. No one knew I'd made Dean's List every semester. I stopped bringing it up. At some point, you learn not to offer information no one intends to hold. It wasn't overt cruelty. That would have been easier to confront. It was quiet omission, systematic, consistent. Logan wasn't malicious. He just existed at the center of gravity they built the household around, and I adapted by shrinking my orbit. Dad once told a neighbor, while I was standing 10 feet away, "Logan's our shot at something big." I don't think he meant for me to hear it, but I did. By junior year, I'd stopped expecting them to visit campus. They missed my research showcase. They missed the departmental award ceremony. They missed everything that didn't involve a scoreboard. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need applause, that capability was enough. But capability, without acknowledgement, becomes isolation. By the time graduation approached, I wasn't surprised they chose the Super Bowl. I was just done pretending it was accidental. And somewhere in the middle of all that quiet endurance, one person had noticed, one person had actually been watching. I just didn't know yet how much that would matter. The night after the Super Bowl phone call, I didn't sit in my room replaying it. I picked up my phone and called the one person who never made me feel like a footnote, my grandmother, Margaret Cole. She answered on the second ring. "Well," she said, sharp as ever, at 81, "I was wondering when you'd call." "You heard?" I said. "Your mother phoned me to justify it," she replied. "Told me about the party, the scout, the timing." A pause. I told her she was wrong. Grandma didn't cushion truth. 35 years teaching high school English had trained her voice to carry without raising it. "You don't have to drive down," I said. She lived nearly 2 hours away. Her knees were bad. Long drives wore her out. "I'll be there," she said immediately. "Even if I have to leave at dawn and crawl the last mile." I closed my eyes. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving anything," she said. "I'm showing up." There was a difference. She paused then, and her tone shifted. "You sound different, Ethan. Different how? Quieter. Like you've already made a decision you haven't told anyone about." Grandma had a way of seeing through silence. "It's nothing," I said. "Just thinking about what comes after." She didn't press. "When you're ready, you'll tell me. Just remember something. Their attention is not the measure of your value." After we hung up, I sat there in the dark. She was right about one thing. I was holding something back. But there was another person who had seen it long before my family ever would. A week before graduation, Professor Andrew Keller asked me to stop by his office. Dr. Keller was in his late 50s, former policy advisor turned academic, direct, precise. Not someone who handed out praise lightly. He'd supervised my thesis on structural inequities and public education funding. He pushed harder than anyone else on faculty. "Close the door," he said when I stepped in. "Sit." I sat. "I've been teaching for 28 years, he began. "I've seen talented students, motivated students. You're both." I waited. He wasn't a man who spoke in generalities. "8 months ago," he continued, "I submitted your name for a nomination. I didn't tell you because I don't believe in raising expectations prematurely." My pulse shifted. A nomination for what? He opened a drawer and took out a sealed envelope, thick paper, embossed seal. He placed it on the desk between us, but didn't slide it over immediately. "Results arrived this morning," he said, "but you're not opening it here." I frowned slightly. "Why not?" "Because regardless of what's inside," he said evenly, "your graduation day should belong to you. Open it after the ceremony." Not before. He finally pushed the envelope toward me. It felt light, too light for the way my heartbeat reacted. "What is it?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Let's just say that if it says what I think it says, your options are about to expand significantly." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "You've done the work, Ethan. Whatever that letter says, you earned it." That night, I slipped the envelope into the inside pocket of my graduation gown and left it there. Grandma was my moral witness. Dr. Keller was something else entirely. He wasn't offering comfort. He was opening a door, and I had a feeling that door led far beyond the house I grew up in. 5 days before graduation, I drove home to collect a few things from my old room books I'd left behind. A framed photo of my grandfather. A winter coat I couldn't afford to replace. I knew the house would be busy. I wasn't prepared for the banner. It stretched across the garage door in bold red and white letters. "Logan Cole, Future Pro Prospect Party, Super Bowl Sunday." I sat in my car with the engine running, staring at it longer than necessary. The letters were at least 3 feet tall, professionally printed, expensive. Inside, the house sounded like a venue already in motion. Music playing, laughter from the kitchen, boxes stacked by the door. Mom was on the phone when I walked in, clipboard in hand. "Yes, 50 confirmed. Maybe more if the Petersons bring their cousins. We'll need extra wings." She glanced at me like I was a delivery driver. "Oh, Ethan, I didn't know you were coming. Just grabbing a few things," I said. Dad was in the backyard, assembling a second television under a canopy tent. Extension cords snaked across the grass. A rented grill sat near the patio. Logan was on the couch, scrolling through his phone, wearing a fitted team jersey like he was already signed. "Hey," he said without looking up. I nodded. The dining table was covered in football-shaped plates, foam fingers, coolers filled with ice. On the counter sat a half-finished sheet cake, Logan's face airbrushed across the frosting, beside the words, "Celebrate Logan" and "Family, Family." I stood there a second longer than I should have. "Need help?" I asked. It was automatic, reflex, a habit built from years of trying to be useful enough to matter. Mom waved a hand dismissively. No, you've got that ceremony thing soon. Right, ceremony thing. 4 years condensed into 2 indifferent words. "It's Sunday," I said. 2 p.m. She squinted slightly. "Remind me that's the same day as the game?" "Yes." "Oh, right." She flipped a page on her clipboard. "What time again? I told you last week. Just text me the details," she said, already turning back to her call. Dad walked in from the yard, wiping his hands with a towel. "Scout confirmed," he said to Logan. "He's bringing 2 associates." Logan grinned. "Nice." I moved toward the hallway. On the entry table sat a stack of invitations ready to mail. I picked one up. "Join us to celebrate Logan Cole and family this Super Bowl Sunday." No mention of graduation, no mention of me. I put it back exactly where it had been, upstairs. My old bedroom looked smaller than I remembered. Posters gone. Desk empty. The only sign I'd ever lived there was a faint rectangle on the wall, where my bookshelf used to be. Issei. I packed the coat, the photo frame, a few textbooks. That night, back on campus, I paced my dorm room with my phone in my hand. One last call. One last attempt to give them the opportunity to choose differently. They answered on the 4th ring. Music blasted in the background. Laughter, glass clinking. Ethan's mom sounded breathless. "Hold on, it's my son. The one graduating tomorrow." At least she remembered the day. "I wanted to tell you something," I said. "Make it quick, honey. We're doing a test run for the party." "I was selected as the student representative speaker," I said, "out of 3,000 graduates." Silence, for half a second. I thought it might land. "That's nice," she replied brightly. "Hold on, Richard. The scout just texted." "Mom, I have to call the caterer back," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow. Love you." The line went dead. I stared at my graduation gown hanging on the closet door. The sealed envelope rested in its inner pocket. Tomorrow. I would stand in front of thousands, and in my own house. I had already been erased from the program. Super Bowl Sunday. I woke before my alarm. The room was quiet, pale, winter light stretching across the ceiling. For a second, I lay there and let myself imagine what this day would look like if it were normal. If my parents were already on the road. If my phone had a message saying, "We're outside." It didn't. I showered, shaved carefully, put on the charcoal suit I'd bought secondhand my sophomore year for internship interviews, pressed the collar flat, knotted my tie twice before it sat right. Then I slipped on the graduation gown and felt the weight of it settle across my shoulders. My phone buzzed. "Logan, good luck today. Man, sent at 2:18 a.m. Nothing from Mom, nothing from Dad." Then another message. "Grandma, leaving now. Traffic already heavy. I wouldn't miss this for anything." That was enough. I ordered a rideshare at 8. The driver was chatty. "Big day," he asked. "Yeah, family meeting you there." I looked out the window at the blur of storefronts passing by. "They've got something else today." He nodded, like he understood. Maybe he did. The stadium was chaos. Balloons, handmade signs, families clustering in tight circles for photos, fathers adjusting caps, mothers brushing lint off gowns, grandparents already crying. I moved through it alone. Section C, row 14, seats 5 through 8. My name printed on a small white placard taped to the railing, Ethan Cole. 4 seats, all empty, except one. Grandma's navy scarf lay folded neatly over the 5th seat. She had been here early enough to claim them. My phone vibrated. "There's an accident on the highway," she texted. "Ambulances everywhere. I'm stuck. Don't wait for me." I stared at the message for a long moment. "Drive safe," I replied. "I'll see you when you get here." Around me, classmates hugged their families before lining up. A girl 2 rows down cried as her father pinned a flower to her gown. Someone's little brother held a poster twice his size. I stood with my hands behind my back and watched. A man sitting a few rows up caught my eye. He had a sign for someone else, but he glanced at the empty seats behind me and gave a small nod. Not pity, recognition. The processional music began. 3,000 graduates shuffled into formation. I didn't look back again. When the announcer called my name to approach the podium as student representative, the applause rolled through the stadium like distant thunder. My legs felt steady. I stepped up, adjusted the microphone, and looked out across 10,000 faces. Somewhere in that sea was 1 navy scarf and 3 empty chairs. For a second, the speech I'd rehearsed evaporated. Then I saw her, Grandma, white hair windblown, moving down the aisle as quickly as her knees would allow, lowering herself into the seat she'd claimed. She raised a hand, gave me a thumbs up. That was enough. 4 years ago, I began, my voice amplified and steady. I arrived here with 2 suitcases and a checking account that barely covered textbooks. The crowd quieted. I didn't have a safety net. What I had was discipline, and the belief that work matters, even when no one is watching. I paused. To every student here who worked night shifts before morning exams, who chose tuition over comfort, who built something without an audience, I see you. My eyes found Grandma. Success isn't about who shows up. It's about who you become when they don't. Silence, then applause. It built slowly, then stronger. A section stood, then another. I stepped back from the podium and walked to my seat. Grandma was on her feet, clapping harder than anyone when they called my name for the diploma. I walked across the stage without scanning the crowd. The chancellor shook my hand. Cameras flashed. I turned toward Section C, 1 navy scarf. 1 woman, standing despite the pain in her knees. Behind her, that same stranger from earlier was clapping too. That was my audience. As I stepped down from the stage, my phone vibrated again. Against my better judgment, I checked it. An Instagram story from Logan. The backyard, grills smoking, Dad laughing with a beer in his hand. Mom wearing team colors, cheering at the television. Caption, "Best Super Bowl party in Georgia," posted at 2:47 p.m., the exact minute my diploma was placed in my hand. I locked my screen. The ceremony ended in a storm of caps thrown into the sky. I didn't throw mine. I walked out holding it, alone. The stadium emptied into the parking lot like a tide pulling back. Families clustered for photos. Car trunks popped open. Laughter carried across the pavement. I moved through it quietly, graduation cap still in my hand. Grandma texted that she was resting in her car near the east entrance. The drive and the rush had worn her out. I told her to stay put. I didn't go to her immediately. Instead, I found a bench near the edge of the lot and sat down. Around me, celebrations unfolded in bright, noisy scenes. A father hoisted his son onto his shoulders. A mother adjusted a gold cord around her daughter's neck. Someone popped champagne. I sat still. 4 years of early mornings. 4 years of proving I could manage alone. 4 years of being the one who didn't need much. My chest felt tight, but I didn't let it show. After a minute, I reached into the inside pocket of my gown and pulled out the envelope. It was heavier now, or maybe I was. I turned it over once. Cream-colored, official seal. My name, printed in clean, precise lettering. I opened it carefully. The paper inside was thick, embossed logo at the top. I recognized it immediately. The Fulbright program. I read the first line once, then again. Dear Mr. Ethan Cole, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a Fulbright Scholar for the 2024-2025 academic year. Your research proposal on educational access and structural inequality has been awarded full funding at the University of Heidelberg, Germany. My eyes moved down the page. Full tuition, monthly living stipend, travel allowance, research appointment, total award value exceeding $125,000. I read it 3 times before it registered fully. Out of over 10,000 applicants, fewer than 800 selected worldwide. Dr. Keller had nominated me 8 months ago. He never said a word. He wanted this to land on graduation day. In that moment, the empty seats behind me changed shape. They weren't a symbol of abandonment anymore. They were proof of distance. Distance between what my parents believed mattered and what actually did. A car door shut nearby. Laughter echoed across the lot. Somewhere across the state, my family was shouting at a television. They had no idea. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to call them. I folded the letter carefully and stood up. Grandma's sedan was parked near a row of trees. She was reclined in the driver's seat, scarf draped over her lap. I tapped on the window. She startled, then smiled wide when she saw me. My graduate, she said, opening the door slowly. I made it. You did. She studied my face. You're different. I handed her the letter without explanation. She read it slowly. Her lips moved across the words. Halfway down the page, she inhaled sharply. Is this real? It's real. She sat back in the seat, like the air had left her lungs, then laughed, full, loud, unrestrained. My grandson, she said, a Fulbright scholar. Don't tell them, I said. Her laughter stopped. She looked at me carefully. Not yet. She nodded once. My birthday's in 3 weeks, she said quietly. The whole family will be there. I didn't respond. Let them hear it in front of everyone. She continued. Let them see what they ignored. I considered it. This wasn't about revenge. It was about correction. Okay? I said finally. She smiled, satisfied. The power hadn't shifted publicly yet, but privately, it already had. The 3 weeks after graduation moved quietly. On the surface, nothing changed. Mom called the following Sunday. Did everything go okay at your ceremony? She asked. It went fine. Good. Good. A pause. Logan's got another evaluation next month. Dallas this time. That scout really sees something in him. I'm sure he does. She hesitated. Have you started looking for jobs yet? With a policy degree? You probably shouldn't be too selective. I'm working on it. That was technically true. I was working on visa paperwork. After we hung up, I filled out forms for the German consulate. Uploaded financial confirmations I didn't actually need, because the award covered everything. Scheduled my appointment. Booked a one-way ticket to Frankfurt, departing 2 days after Grandma's birthday. I told no one, except her. Dad didn't call at all. Logan texted once. You coming home for Grandma's? Yeah, I replied. I'll be there. He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I packed up my dorm, closed my student account, and checked into a motel 20 minutes outside my parents' town the night before the party. Peeling wallpaper, flickering bedside lamp. The kind of place where no one asks questions. It felt appropriate. Mom texted around 7. Are you in town? Your room's ready. Staying with a friend. I replied. See you tomorrow. No follow-up. On the motel bed, I laid everything out carefully. The Fulbright acceptance letter, the official confirmation from Heidelberg, the visa approval email, the printed flight itinerary. Weapons wasn't the right word. Documentation was. Proof. I wasn't preparing to argue. I was preparing to state facts. Grandma called that night, voice almost giddy. I've planned it perfectly, she said, right after I cut the cake. I'll ask everyone to share their good news. Logan will brag first. Let him. It'll make what you say land harder. You've thought this through. I've had 3 weeks. I sat cross-legged on the stiff motel comforter, staring at my reflection in the dark television screen. What if they don't react, I asked. What if it just sits there? Then that tells you everything you need to know, she said calmly. This isn't about their reaction. It's about you standing up. She was right. For 22 years, I'd waited for acknowledgement. Tomorrow, I would stop waiting. After we hung up, I folded the papers back into a slim portfolio and slid it into my bag. I checked my flight details one more time. Departure Tuesday, 6:40 p.m., one way. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't impulsive. It wasn't emotional. It was measured. Graduation had shown me what my absence looked like. Tomorrow, they would see what it meant. Grandma's house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. White siding, wraparound porch, the same wind chimes she'd had since I was 10. Today, the driveway was full. Cars lined the street. At least 30 people inside. Aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors who'd known us for years. I parked down the block and sat in my car for a moment. My bag rested on the passenger seat. Inside it, the letter, the confirmation, the ticket. I stepped out. The house swallowed me the second I walked through the door. Ethan, how's the job hunt going? Your mom said you're still figuring things out. Have you talked to Logan about maybe networking through his sports contacts? Logan was in the living room, center of gravity as always, wearing another team jersey, surrounded by relatives leaning in, as he described his latest evaluation. Coach said I could be looking at a developmental contract by fall, he said confidently. Dad stood behind him, hand on his shoulder. That's my boy. Mom hovered nearby, smiling at anyone who would look. No one asked about graduation. No one mentioned the speech. I moved to the back of the room near the kitchen. Grandma caught my eye immediately, a small nod. Soon, the cake came out 82 candles this year. We sang. She blew them out in one breath. Stubborn as ever, then she raised her hand. The room quieted. I've been alive a long time, she said, long enough to know that good news deserves to be shared. Let's hear it, one at a time. Logan stepped forward instantly. Well, Grandma, he said, flashing a grin. The scout thinks I've got a real shot this year. Might be looking at a practice squad offer by winter. Applause. Dad clapped loudest. That's excellent, Grandma said evenly. An aunt shared a promotion. A cousin announced an engagement. Another mentioned twins on the way. Then Grandma turned toward me. And you, Ethan? 30 faces shifted in my direction. Mom leaned toward Aunt Carol and whispered, not quietly enough. He's still exploring options. Grandma's voice cut clean through the room. Let him speak. I stepped forward. I didn't rush. I took the letter out of my bag and unfolded it carefully. I received this 3 weeks ago, I said. I held it up so the letterhead was visible. The Fulbright program selected me as a scholar for the 2024-2025 academic year. I'll be conducting research at Heidelberg University in Germany. Silence. Complete. I continued. Out of over 10,000 applicants, fewer than 800 were selected worldwide. The award covers full tuition, living stipend, research funding. Total package exceeds $125,000. Aunt Carol blinked. Fulbright, the international one, yes. Murmurs began. Uncle James pulled out his phone. Acceptance rates under 10%, he muttered. Logan's smile faded. Dad's face went pale. Mom looked like someone had shifted the floor beneath her. Grandma spoke softly. Tell them when you found out. I looked directly at my parents. Graduation day, I said, the same day you hosted a Super Bowl party. The room changed. I didn't raise my voice. I gave the student address to 3,000 graduates. I continued. There were 4 seats reserved for you. They were empty. Mom opened her mouth. Ethan, I called the night before, I said evenly. I told you I was speaking. Dad stepped forward. Why didn't you tell us about this sooner? Would it have changed your plans? He didn't answer. Uncle James frowned. You two skipped his graduation. It was Super Bowl Sunday, Dad said weakly. We had 50 guests. Aunt Carol stared at him. He graduated with honors and won a Fulbright. The tide shifted visibly. 30 pairs of eyes turned from me to my parents. Grandma stood slowly. I stayed quiet for years, she said, voice steady. But not today. You chose a football game over your son's achievement, and you did it without asking what it cost him. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know it was this important. You didn't ask, Grandma replied. The words landed hard. Mom looked at me. We thought you were fine. You've always been so capable. I was capable because I had to be, I said. There wasn't another option. Dad straightened slightly, trying to recover authority. We love you both equally. I met his eyes. You invested differently. He flinched. I worked 2 jobs. I continued. I paid my own way. You bought Logan a car, a trainer, flights. I'm not angry about that. I'm just done pretending it wasn't a choice. The room was silent, except for someone shifting uncomfortably near the doorway. Logan stepped forward then. Is this true? He asked our parents. Mom couldn't answer. Dad stared at the floor. Logan ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know it was like this. I know, I said. He looked at me, something unsettled in his expression. You should have told me. You should have asked. He nodded once. You're right, that mattered more than I expected. I reached back into my bag. There's one more thing. I pulled out the printed itinerary. My flight leaves in 2 days. One way. Mom's head snapped up. 2 days, Ethan. We need time. You had 22 years. Dad's voice sharpened. You can't just leave the country without discussing it. I don't need permission. He stopped talking. There was nothing left to leverage. Grandma crossed the room and stood beside me. This is the best birthday gift I've ever received, she said, watching my grandson stand up for himself. She turned to my parents. You have 2 days. Use them wisely. Mom began crying openly now. Logan looked at me again. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not for them, for me. I nodded. I appreciate that. I looked around the room at the relatives, the witnesses. I'm not leaving because I hate this family, I said. I'm leaving because I finally understand where I'm valued. No one argued. For the first time in my life, the room was not orbiting Logan. It was still, and I was standing at the center. 2 days later, I stood at the international departures terminal with one suitcase and a carry-on. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since Grandma's party. 43 missed calls from Mom, 14 from Dad, 9 texts from Logan, some apologizing, some just checking in. One that read simply, I get it, I hadn't answered. Not because I wanted to punish them, because I needed the silence. The only message I opened was from Grandma that morning. Fly steady. The world is larger than the room you left, I replied with a simple love you. Boarding was called for Frankfurt. Around me, families hugged tightly. A father clapped his son's back. A mother wiped tears from her daughter's face. My goodbye had already happened. In a living room full of witnesses. There was no one at the gate for me, and for the first time, that didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like momentum. I scanned my boarding pass and walked down the jetway without looking back. The plane was half full. Midweek flights rarely are. I took a window seat and fastened my belt as the engines hummed to life. As we lifted off, the city beneath me shrank into grids of light, suburbs, highways, the faint curve of the river near my parents' neighborhood. I didn't feel anger, I felt clarity. Somewhere down there, they were realizing something irreversible had shifted. Not because I'd yelled, not because I'd demanded anything, because I'd chosen, somewhere over the Atlantic. I opened my laptop and wrote to Dr. Keller, I'm on the plane. Thank you for seeing something in me before I did. I won't waste it. He responded before I switched to airplane mode fully. I never had doubts. Go make good use of the door you walked through. I closed the screen and looked out at the dark horizon. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting, I was moving. 6 months later. Winter settled over Heidelberg in quiet, gray layers. My apartment was small, functional, books stacked against the wall, research papers spread across the desk. My work on funding disparities in rural education districts was gaining attention faster than I expected. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a video call from Mom. I hesitated. Then I answered. She looked older, tired, but composed. Thank you for picking up, she said. I waited. Your father and I have been in therapy, she continued. We've been unpacking patterns. I didn't rescue her from the silence. We treated you differently, she said finally. We told ourselves you didn't need us, that you were strong enough alone. I see now how that was easier for us than facing our own fears. I nodded once. I'm not asking you to come back, she added quickly. I just needed you to know we're trying to understand. That matters, I said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. A year after graduation, I stood at a conference podium in Berlin, presenting my research to 300 academics from 5 continents. When the applause ended, a professor from Oxford approached me with a doctoral offer. Later that night, I called Grandma. They want you for a PhD, she said. Delighted. 3 offers, I replied. That's my boy. And Logan, she asked gently. He didn't make the league, I said. He's coaching high school now. There was no bitterness in it. He called last week, I added. Said he's proud of me. Grandma was quiet for a moment. Families are complicated, she said. They are. Over time. Dad apologized too. Awkwardly, stiffly. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. I've come to understand them differently now. Dad projected unfinished dreams onto Logan because he couldn't face his own. Mom equated security with visibility and money because she grew up without either. They didn't mean to erase me. They just didn't know how to see anything that didn't fit their definition of success. But here's what I learned. You can't wait to be recognized. You can't shrink yourself, hoping someone notices. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They're clarity. Leaving wasn't revenge. It was alignment. If you've ever been the one who handled everything quietly, while someone else got the spotlight, understand this silence is not weakness. Endurance is not invisibility. And walking away when you've done everything you could is not betrayal. It's growth. Thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, carry it forward. Sometimes the strongest move isn't louder. It's choosing the door and stepping through it. Disclaimer: this story is inspired by real emotional dynamics many people experience. Names, locations, and certain details have been adapted for narrative purposes. Any resemblance to actual individuals is coincidental.